Have you ever had that little ritual at the end of the month? You know the one, where you log into your banking app, probably late at night when the house is quiet, and you move a few €100 from your main account into that folder labeled savings or future or maybe emergency fund? There's this tiny, fleeting hit of dopamine, isn't there? You feel like you've done something virtuous. You've been a good adult. You've resisted the temptation of that overpriced Zara jacket or the fancy tapas dinner with your friends in the city center. You look at that balance and you think, okay, I'm building something. I'm buying myself security. But then, a few months later, you go to buy, well, anything. Maybe it's a train ticket from Berlin to Munich, or maybe you're just looking at the price of a block of butter in the supermarket, and you realize with a sinking feeling that while your savings balance has gone up by 5%, the cost of actually living has gone up by 10%. Suddenly, that security feels a bit like trying to hold water in a bucket made of lace. To be honest, it's a bit of a gut punch. You did everything right, didn't you? You worked hard, you sacrificed your weekends, you skipped the unnecessary joys, and yet you're standing still, or worse, you're drifting backward. My name is Captain Capital, and I spend way too much time, seriously, probably an unhealthy amount, thinking about the glitch in the matrix of our financial psychology. I obsess over why we, especially in Europe, with our deep-seated culture of putting money under the mattress, are so obsessed with saving when the math tells us we're actually losing. I've spent years watching people, smart, hard-working people, exchange the best hours of their youth for pieces of paper that lose value while they sleep. Today, I want to talk about something that might feel a bit uncomfortable. We're going to look at what I call the tragedy of the saver. It's the realization that if you're just hoarding cash in a traditional bank account, you aren't just losing money, you are literally wasting the one thing you can never get back: your time. We're going to peel back the layers of why our brains are wired to love the safety of a bank balance, how the European Central Bank is basically a silent partner in your savings account, and why your obsession with saving for a rainy day might be causing you to miss the entire summer of your life. It's time to stop looking at money as a trophy and start looking at it for what it actually is: frozen time. Are you ready to see how the safe choice might be the riskiest move you ever make?
The Espresso Index and the Silent Thief. Let's start with a very European reality check. To be honest, the best way to understand the tragedy of saving isn't by looking at complex stock market charts. It's by looking at the price of an espresso. If you were in Rome 5 years ago, you could stand at a bar and get a decent shot of caffeine for €1. Maybe €1.10 if you were in a fancy spot. Today, good luck with that. The price has crept up cent by cent until suddenly you're handing over €1.50 or €2. Now, imagine you saved that €1 in 2019. You put it in a high-yield, well, back then it was probably 0.01% savings account. Today, you have €1, 1 cent. But that euro can no longer buy you the espresso. You've saved the money, but you've lost the experience. You've lost the utility. This is inflation, the silent thief. And in the Eurozone, it's been a very busy thief lately. But here's the kicker. When you save money, you aren't just saving currency. You're saving the hours of your life you spent to earn that currency. If you make $20 an hour and you save $100, you've basically frozen 5 hours of your life in a bank account. But if inflation eats 10% of that value, then the bank has effectively deleted 30 minutes of your life. You worked those 30 minutes for nothing. They're gone. You can't get them back. I remember talking to a guy in Frankfurt who was incredibly proud of his cash cushion. He had €50,000 just sitting there. He'd been saving it since 2015. He felt like a king. But when we actually did the math, factoring in the massive spike in energy costs and rent in Germany, his €50,000 now had the buying power that €38,000 had when he started. He hadn't saved €50,000. He had lost the equivalent of several years of hard work. The bank didn't protect him. It just hosted the slow-motion robbery of his time. Why does this matter? Because we're taught that saving is safe. But in a world where the currency is being devalued, sitting on cash is actually a very aggressive gamble. You're betting that the euro will hold its value better than assets, stocks, or even your own personal growth. And looking at the last decade, that's a bet that almost nobody is winning.
We've all been there, right? You're on a website, maybe looking for a flight from London to Barcelona, and you spend 3 hours, 3 whole hours, switching between tabs, clearing your cookies, and checking budget airlines just to save £20. You finally find the deal, you click buy, and you feel that rush of victory. I saved £20. But let's look at the math of the soul for a second. If you spent 3 hours to save £20, you've essentially valued your own life at £6.66 per hour. Is that what you're worth? To be honest, I think most of us would be insulted if our boss offered us that wage, yet we pay it to ourselves all the time in the name of saving. This is the cheapskate's paradox. We become so obsessed with the amount of money we keep that we forget the value of the time we spend to keep it. I see this a lot in Northern Europe, where there's a real culture of frugality for the sake of frugality. People will drive 10 kilometers out of their way to find a gas station where the petrol is 2 cents cheaper per liter. They save, maybe £1.20 on a full tank, but they spent 20 minutes of their life, burned extra fuel to get there, and added stress to their day. I once had a neighbor who would spend his entire Saturday morning clipping coupons and visiting 3 different supermarkets to get the best deals. He probably saved €15 a week, but he lost every Saturday morning with his kids. He was saving money, but he was wasting his life's most precious currency. We have to start asking ourselves, what is the hourly rate of my frugality? If the effort you put into saving money is worth less than your actual hourly wage, you aren't saving, you're just working a second, very low-paying job that you hate. The tragedy is that we don't see it that way because saving feels like a moral victory. But there is no moral victory in valuing your time at zero.
The psychology of the safety blanket. Why do we do it then? Why do we hold on to cash like it's a life raft in the middle of the Atlantic? To be honest, it's because our brains are still wired for the Pleistocene era, not the digital era of the ECB. For our ancestors, saving meant having a pile of grain or a salted pig in the cellar. Those were real, tangible things that didn't lose value over time. They actually gained value when winter hit. In the modern world, your bank balance is just a number on a screen, but your brain perceives that number as a safety blanket. The higher the number, the more protected you feel. But this is a psychological glitch. True safety in the 21st century doesn't come from a pile of depreciating cash. It comes from assets and skills. Think about it. If the economy crashes or if inflation goes to 20%, who is safer? The person with €100,000 in a savings account or the person who owns a profitable business, a piece of productive land, or has a set of skills that the world desperately needs? The saver is at the mercy of the people who print the money. The asset owner and the skill builder are the ones who set the prices. I've noticed this safety trap is particularly strong in countries like Italy and Greece, where history has taught people to be suspicious of banks and governments. So what do? They keep cash. But by keeping cash, they are inadvertently staying in a state of financial childhood. They aren't letting their money grow up and work for them. They're keeping it in a nursery where it slowly shrinks. We need to redefine what safety means. Safety isn't a stagnant pool of money. It's a flowing river of value. If your money isn't moving, it's dying. And if it's dying, the time you spent earning it was wasted. It's a harsh truth, but knowing it is the first step towards actually being secure. Let's talk about the opportunity cost, the dreams you didn't buy. Let's talk about the ghost portfolio. This is the collection of all the things you could have done
the investments you could have made, and the experiences you could have had if you hadn't been so focused on saving. In economics, we call this opportunity cost. Every time you choose to keep 1,000 euros in a 0% savings account, you are choosing not to put it into the S&P 500, or not to use it for a course that could double your salary, or not to take that trip to Japan while your knees still work. To be honest, the tragedy isn't just that the money loses value, it's that the opportunity for that money to change your life disappears. Imagine you're 25. You save 5,000 euros. You're very proud. You keep it in the bank for 10 years. At 35, you still have 5,000 euros, roughly. But if you'd invested it in a basic global index fund, you might have had 10,000 or 12,000 euros. But it's not just about the extra 5 grand. It's about what that money represents. Maybe that extra money was the deposit for a house that would have saved you 800 euros a month in rent. Or maybe it was the FU money that would have allowed you to quit a job you hated and start your own company. By saving the 5,000 euros, you actually lost the house and the business. I see this all the time with people who save for retirement but refuse to spend a penny on their own health or education now. They're waiting for this magical future where they'll finally be allowed to use their money. But money has a utility curve. 10,000 euros is worth a lot more to you at 28 than it is at 78. At 28, it can buy you a new career path, a life partner, or a world-altering experience. At 78, it buys you a slightly nicer room in the care home. We have to stop treating money as a hoard and start treating it as a fuel. Fuel is useless if it just sits in the tank. It only has value when it's being burned to get you somewhere. If you're just saving, you're just filling the tank of a car you never drive.
The European Central Bank and the war on savers. We can't talk about the tragedy of the saver without talking about the people in the tall buildings in Frankfurt. To be honest, the European Central Bank, ECB, doesn't want you to save. Their entire mandate is built around the idea of keeping money moving. They want inflation to be around 2%. Why? Because if money loses a little bit of value every year, it encourages you to spend it or invest it. It keeps the gears of the economy turning. For the last decade, we've seen interest rates that were zero or even negative. This was basically a giant flashing neon sign from the government saying, "Stop saving cash." If you kept your money in a bank during those years, you were effectively paying the bank for the privilege of letting them devalue your money. It feels unfair, doesn't it? You do the responsible thing, and the system punishes you. But the system isn't designed for your personal comfort. It's designed for macroeconomic stability. The saver is the collateral damage of a system that needs consumption to survive. I remember when my grandmother in France found out that her livret A, a popular French savings account, was paying an interest rate that was lower than inflation. She was devastated. She felt like the government was stealing from her. And, in a way, she was right. But the mistake she made was thinking that the rules of 1970 still applied in 2024. The tragedy is that many of us are still playing by the 1970s rulebook. We think the bank is a vault. It's not. It's a clearinghouse. If you want to protect your time, you have to stop trusting the institutions that are literally designed to make you spend. You have to become your own central bank. You have to allocate your life hours into things that the ECB can't print more of, like land, companies, and your own brain.
The rainy day myth. How much is enough? But Cap, you're probably thinking, I need an emergency fund. What if I lose my job? What if my car breaks down in the middle of a French motorway? Absolutely, you do. But here is where the saver's tragedy gets sneaky. We use the emergency fund as an excuse to hoard way more than we actually need. I've met people who have 2 years of living expenses sitting in a savings account. 2 years. Unless you're a freelance artist specializing in 14th century Mongolian throat singing, you probably don't need a 2-year cash cushion.
For most people with a stable job in Europe, where we have social safety nets, unemployment insurance, and decent healthcare, a 3 to 6 month cushion is plenty. Anything beyond that is just dead time. It's hours of your life that are sitting in a bank account, slowly rotting away. I call this the insurance trap. We're so afraid of a hypothetical rainy day that we live our entire lives under an umbrella, even when the sun is shining. I once coached a woman in London who had £80,000 in a savings account. She was terrified of losing her job, but she hated her job. She was staying in a toxic environment because she was afraid, and her security was just a pile of cash that she was too scared to use to actually change her life. She was using her savings to subsidize her own misery. To be honest, a real emergency fund isn't just cash. It's a network of friends, it's a high-demand skill set, and it's a diversified portfolio of assets. If you have those things, you don't need to hoard cash. You can afford to let your money go out and work. Don't let your fear of the rain stop you from planting the seeds that will actually feed you in the future.
The paradox of choice: why spending is harder than saving. Here's an observation that might sting a bit. For many of us, saving is actually the easy way out. It's a way of avoiding the difficult decisions of what to actually do with our lives. Spending money, real meaningful spending, requires thought. You have to decide what you value. You have to decide if that trip is worth it, or if that investment is sound, or if that charity deserves your help. Saving, on the other hand, is passive. You just don't do anything. You let the money sit there. It's the ultimate procrastination of life. I see this in the FIRE community a lot. People get so obsessed with the saving phase, eating lentils, never going out, living in a shoebox, that they forget how to actually be a person. They save and save and save, and then they reach their number at 45, and they realize they have no hobbies, no friends, and no idea what makes them happy. They saved the money, but they lost the ability to spend it well. To be honest, spending money wisely is a skill that takes practice. If you don't practice it when you have a little, you won't know how to do it when you have a lot. The saver's tragedy is that they become a world-class hoarder, but a total amateur at living. I've had moments where I've looked at my own bank account and thought, I should save this. But then I forced myself to spend it on something that would actually improve my life or the lives of people I care about. And you know what? Every single time, the life value I got from that spending was far higher than the 2% interest I would have made in the bank. Don't use saving as a way to hide from the responsibility of living. Your money is a vote for the kind of world you want to live in and the kind of person you want to be. Cast your votes while they still count.
So, what do we do? If saving is a tragedy, what's the comedy? How do we win? To be honest, it's about changing your fundamental identity. You have to stop being a saver and start being an owner. Savers are passive. Owners are active. Savers wait for the bank to give them a crumb of interest. Owners take the cake. In the modern European economy, wealth doesn't go to the people who work the hardest or save the most, it goes to the people who own the means of production. This sounds like some old-school Marxist theory, but it's actually the most basic rule of capitalism. If you own a piece of a company, through stocks, you own a share of their profits and their innovation. If you own real estate, you own a piece of the finite space on this planet. These things have intrinsic value that can't be inflated away by a central bank. I remember the first time I bought a global index fund. I only put in 500 euros. It wasn't much, but psychologically it was a massive shift. I wasn't saving 500 euros, I was buying a tiny piece of Apple, Nestle, Volkswagen, and thousands of other companies. I was becoming an owner. I was putting my frozen time into engines that were designed to create more value. The practical tip here? Automate your ownership. Set up a direct debit to a brokerage account. Make it so that the money leaves your hands before you even have a chance to save it. To be honest, once the money is in an investment, you stop thinking about it as money and start thinking about it as assets. And assets don't rot, they grow. You don't need to be a Wall Street genius, you just need to stop being a bank's favorite customer. The bank loves savers because savers provide the cheap capital the bank uses to lend to, you guessed it, the owners. Don't be the person providing the ladder. Be the person climbing it.
The legacy of time. What are you really leaving behind? We often save because we want to leave something behind for our kids or our loved ones. It's a noble instinct. But let's look at the tragedy through that lens for a second. If you worked 60 hours a week to save a massive inheritance for your children, but you're too tired or too busy to actually spend time with them, what are you actually giving them? You're giving them a pile of cash to compensate for the fact that you weren't there. You're exchanging your presence for presents. I've seen families torn apart by inheritances, and the irony is, the kids would have almost always traded the money for more memories of their parents being happy and engaged. To be honest, the best inheritance you can give your kids isn't a bank account. It's a set of values, a good education, and the memory of a parent who lived a full and meaningful life. There's a concept I love called die with zero. The idea is that you should aim to have spent all your money by the time you die, because any money left over represents wasted life energy. It's time you spent working that you never got to enjoy. Now that's an extreme idea, and it might not work for everyone. No, it's a powerful mental exercise. If you knew you were going to die in 10 years, would you keep saving at the same rate? Of course not. You'd start converting that cash back into life hours as fast as you could. The tragedy is that we act like we're going to live forever. We save for a someday that isn't guaranteed. I'm not saying be reckless. I'm saying be intentional. Don't save for the sake of saving. Save for a specific purpose, and once that purpose is met, stop. Start living. Because at the end of the day, your net worth won't be the number on your bank statement. It will be the sum of the stories you can tell.
Conclusion. Waking up from the saver's dream. So, where does this leave us? We've walked through the silent theft of inflation, the paradox of the cheapskate, the false safety of the bank balance, and the hidden cost of missed opportunities. It's been a bit of a journey, and to be honest, I know it can feel a little overwhelming. It's like being told that the safe path you've been walking on your whole life is actually a treadmill that's slowly moving backward. But here's the thing. Once you see the treadmill, you can step off it. The tragedy of the saver isn't a life sentence. It's just a misunderstanding of what money is. Money is not the goal. Money is the container for your time and energy. And if the container is leaking, you need to move your energy into a better one. I want you to do something for me this evening. Open your banking app. Look at that savings number. But don't see it as euros. See it as hours of your life. Think about the mornings you got up early, the stress you endured, the things you missed to earn that number. And then ask yourself, is this the best place for my life to stay? Is this number growing or is it shrinking? Is it buying me freedom or is it just sitting in a dark room gathering dust? You have the power to stop the tragedy. You can choose to become an owner. You can choose to invest in yourself. You can choose to trade some of that saved money for an experience that will make you a richer person than a bank balance ever could. To be honest, financial freedom isn't about how much you have. It's about how little your money controls you. It's about knowing that you've used your time well. I'm Captain Capital. I want you to be wealthy, yes, but more than that, I want you to be alive. Stop hoarding the past and start buying your future. Because the only thing more tragic than losing your money is losing the time you spent to get it. Take a breath. Look at the sun while it's still up. And remember, your life is happening right now, not when your savings account hits a certain number. Go live it, consciously, boldly, and with your eyes wide open. Cheers to your new, active, and very untragic financial life.